All right, welcome to the Glass Pavilion here at the Toledo Museum. Tonight we're very privileged and honored to be hosting a visiting artist by the name of Fritz Dreisbach here at the Glass Pavilion. Fritz is going to talk a little bit to you guys about the American studio glass movement in his lecture, so he said to keep his introduction short, but since he's not really talking much about himself, I'm going to just tell you a little bit about him. Fritz is here as part of our GAPP residency, Guest Artist Pavilion Project is what GAPP stands for, and he has been here doing a 5-day residency, and now he's on to teaching a 4-day intensive workshop about carving, cutting glass, and then working it in the hot shop. So it's a multi-stage process he's teaching. So he comes here every now and then and always surprises us with new techniques and things he's doing. Fritz Dreisbach was born in Cleveland, Ohio. He's a studio glass artist and teacher. Fritz is recognized as one of the pioneers of the American studio glass movement. He has 4 degrees, including a BA from Hiram College and an MFA from the University of Wisconsin. In a 35-year teaching career, Fritz has taught at over 130 institutions worldwide, including the Pilchuck Glass School, Penland School of Crafts, and our very own Toledo Museum of Art, just to name a couple. Fritz is also a founding member of the Glass Art Society. He has received multiple awards and fellowships. The Glass Art Society presented Dreisbach with an honorary lifetime membership and a Lifetime Achievement Award. In 1988, he was elected to the College of Fellows of the American Craft Council. Most recently, he received the Brechteva-Lebinsky Award from Pilchuck Glass School. Dreisbach's work is included in the public collections of numerous museums, the American Craft Museum, Cincinnati Museum of Art, Cooper Hewitt Museum, Corning Museum of Glass, High Museum of Art in Atlanta, Mint Museum of Art, Charlotte, the National Collection of American Art, and the Renwick Gallery of the Smithsonian Institution, as well as others overseas. His work can be found in the Glasmuseet Abeltoft, Denmark, the Glass Museum in Fraunau, Germany, as well as the Birmingham Museum of Art in England. So that's just some of them. Fritz has inspired so many people to work with glass. I'm one person who was personally inspired by Fritz, and I'm sure there's numerous here. So we're very, very happy to have him here, and he's been dubbed the Johnny Appleseed of glassblowing. So let's welcome Fritz Dreisbach. Here's Johnny.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here in the pavilion again. This lecture I started putting this talk together maybe 35 years ago, maybe more. The idea was to tell people what had happened and who did what, when they did it, and how it got started. A few years ago, the Corning Museum asked me to make a large ceremonial vessel to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the Toledo workshops, which were in March and June of 1962. But in 1972, I made a 10th anniversary cup, and that piece, that goblet, is here in this collection. The 30th is in the Corning Museum. And I sort of screwed up. I didn't get a 50th made. But maybe it'll get done someday. So I use these slides when I'm not in Toledo so that I can show everybody what Toledo looks like. But we can zoom right past that slide. But you know, the museum is a beautiful museum, and I love it, and I've always enjoyed working here. I was not a part of the 62 workshops. I was not yet involved with glass. I didn't start until 2 years later. But my teacher Tom McLaughlin was a part of the 62 workshop. That's Tom. And there's another view of Tom here somewhere. Well, anyway, Tom, trust me, he was here. And then Tom ended up, so he was my teacher in Iowa City when I first started working. And he told me stories about the 62 workshops. And he's one of those people that was very honest about what happened and who did what. And he didn't blow his own horn ever. It just wasn't part of his nature. He was a very kind and gentle guy. He was quiet. The three individuals who are always mentioned when we talk about the 62 workshop are Leaf Green, the retired Libby glassblower, and in fact the only person that really knew how to blow glass that was there in 62 and showed the people how to blow glass. Labino, who was a native, lived right up the river a little bit, from here in Grand Rapids, Ohio, and Littleton from Wisconsin, who was a pottery professor at Madison, Wisconsin, who wanted to do glass and decided that it was something that should be done and started getting different people involved in it. Otto Whitman, who was the director of the Toledo Museum at that time, told Littleton, if you really want to do this, we'll support you, but you have to do it in Toledo. I'm not going to send money. I'm not going to send Toledo money up to Madison, Wisconsin. You have to do it down here. And of course, that was a very smart move on Otto's part, because now Toledo gets the credit for that big workshop. Those two, there were two of them, one in March, one in June. Now, not a lot of work was made in those, but what really made it happen, and what was really important that it happened, was that they proved it could be done, on a small scale. Before this, most glass that was made was done in big factories. And big factories are not hospitable. They're not nice places to be in. And they're noisy, they're dirty, and so on. So Leaf Green, as I said earlier, was a retired glassblower, and he helped show everybody those first few days, of the workshop, how to gather the glass, block it, blow it. I'll never forget, Edith Franklin had been trying to blow a bubble. She was one of the students. She's a potter here in Toledo. Just died a couple years ago, but we remember Edith Franklin fondly. And she said that she had trouble getting the bubble to come out, and when she saw Leaf Green, he would blow with capping the blowpipe with his thumb. This is sort of a technical part. Maybe I don't want to get too technical with it. And she said, "Oh, that's how you get the bubble to come out. Nobody told me about the thumb." But at any rate, the March workshop barely proved that it was possible to do it again, so they did do it again. They did it in June. And here's some shots from that June workshop. The students working with Leaf Green and Littleton and Lavina. So my personal three heroes in this glass activity are these gentlemen, Littleton, Lavino, and Erwin Eisch. Eisch is from Germany, lives over in Germany, in Frauenau, near the Czech border in southern Germany, Bavaria. And he was an independent artist working. In this case, he had his own little studio shop, but it was in his parents' glass factory, down in the basement. So he had access to the factory, but he needed his own space in order to do his sculpture. Lavino was an engineer and inventor, and a very smart man. He's probably given us more of the techniques of how to build the equipment and what to use for building the equipment than anyone else. And Littleton had the connections in the art world. So these three gentlemen were extremely important to me, and to many, many of the other artists that were working at that time. So here's the glass studio up at the top left, the glass studio at Madison, Wisconsin, and the bottom left, and Harvey blowing there. And some of the pieces that he was making when I was a student in the middle 60s in Madison. And Lubino, this furnace is, I think, it's an important icon of this activity that we're doing today. And that style, that design, that type of furnace was all over the United States, in studios all over the United States, and in fact even went overseas, to Asia, to Europe, to Australia. It's an amazingly good idea, a good furnace design. And someone once counted how many pictures of Lubino style furnaces are in my slide lecture, the one you're seeing tonight. 25 different furnaces. I'm not counting multiples. And that was his studio, and he and Libby standing in front of the big milling machines and the annealing oven on the right. And Nick, as I said, was very clever. He built a lot of interesting things. But the thing that I remember Nick for the most with glass was color. He made the most spectacular colors, and I just always loved his color. And his sense of design was based on classical objects, which he saw where? In the Toledo Museum of Art, of course. So he'd come up here and look at some pieces, and then he'd drive home and make them, blow them himself. Aish, as I said, was from a family of glass workers, and he was trained as a sculptor and painter in Munich, Germany. But he had an incredible sense of humor. There's a bleeding heart in the center, and on the left is a stein that doesn't open, a beer stein for Alcoholics Anonymous. I made that up. That's not his type. And then the stein on the right is for Mother's Milk. This is a sculpture that he did. It's called Narcissus. It's a life-sized figure out of blown glass parts that were mirrored on the inside, so that when you looked at Narcissus, when you looked at the figure, you saw your own face. So, what's happening in the 60s? Very few collectors, magazines, authors, galleries, critics. But some important events start to happen in the late 60s. The art departments became our Medici, as it were. They were the support system that allowed the arts and crafts to develop in the United States. And the GI Bill, returning soldiers with the GI Bill were able to study and take classes, and many of them wanted to do something with their hands and without somebody else telling them what to do. And really, the arts were a perfect match for them. They were a perfect place for them to work. And very few exhibitions. We'll see a couple of them. They're pretty funny. And conferences. The conferences were extremely important also. These photographs, the black and white photograph and the one on the right are from the World Craft Council meeting in New York City at Columbia University. And that's a little furnace that Nick Lubino sent to that symposium so that people could blow glass. And then later that furnace went up to Haystack. You see it down in the lower left. The same furnace went up to Maine to a small craft school, summer school, called Haystack School. And that's Erwin Aish on the right, blowing glass, demonstrating what was possible, what these crazy Americans were doing, and many of the European glass workers, glass artists, had come to the United States for this initial symposium, and that was the first time they saw the crazy Americans doing their thing. It was good. It was good. They were a little bit jealous of the freedom that we had and that we exercised and the way that we could do things. That was pretty interesting to them because they were steeped in tradition and bound by tradition, and there were laws and rules, and you could get in trouble if you went beyond those rules, outside of those. No, I've already let the cat out of the bag, but I don't know which one this one is, but this is up now somewhere around 9 or 10. But that's a living no furnace. It was actually made by Nick and donated to Ohio University down in Athens. That's the first place that I did a workshop. That's where I cut my eye teeth or my lip. I don't know how to say that. So the very first school was Madison, Wisconsin, where Harvey was teaching, and he went back and started that in 62 or 3. And then one of his top dog students was Marvin Leposki, who the next year went to the University of California at Berkeley. And at the same time, 64, the fall of 64, Bob Fritz started the glass program at San Jose State in San Jose, California. But in 64, in the summer of 64, there's Iowa, it says State University of Iowa. They call it just the U of Iowa now. In Iowa City, that is the school where I was studying painting and was put into this glass blowing experimental class totally by accident. If we have time, ask me, that's a fun story. So there are some of the other schools, Mankato, RISD, Chicago Art Institute, Philadelphia, Toledo, et cetera, et cetera. It goes on Athens, probably. Now, in addition to the schools, many of the students wanted more blowing time. And this is Brian Lonsway right here. You can see this is Brian in his poster. This is Brian actually standing beside his 32 Chevrolet, which holds a trailer with a complete glass studio on board that trailer. And he would fire it up. In fact, it even had propane right here. So it was burning, and he could be driving down the road, and he actually blew glass in a parade down Monroe Street. I wish I could have seen that. And Bud Botley, up in the upper left, had a glass shop in his backyard in his garage, but it was very crowded. He had a lot of tools and things in the garage, so oftentimes when it was a nice day, he punched a hole in the side of the garage, and he had a railroad track that allowed the furnace to roll outside. It was completely independent. He just used a flexible gas line. But the blower and everything was all mounted under the furnace. And Gary Dutton did a glass studio when he was a student in Chico State University, California. And that's the studio that I say is the cheapest glass studio in the world. Now, a lot of people scrounged and did a very good job of scrounging their stuff to get the bricks and the pipes and all the things you need to build a studio. But Gary went one step farther. He got almost everything from the dump. He even got the annealing oven. You see that round kill to the right of the furnace? That came from the dump because somebody threw it away because it didn't work. And he just took the element and twisted it together and worked fine for the next 5 years. He didn't have any insulating bricks, so he just used red brick. You know, of course it's not as good, not as efficient. But what makes it the cheapest glass studio in the world was that he was in university housing and he tapped into the university gas line. So he had free glass. I love it. And here's Dixie Daniels' studio in North Georgia mountains, Tacoma, Georgia. on the top, and on the bottom is our two slides from the opening of the Glass Crafts Building in 1969. And those are some of my students. There's Phil. Yeah, I forgot that he was in this picture. We just met Phil, Jack and I, a few days ago. So he's been gone from here for 30-some years. Anyway, this was what I thought was the most expensive glass studio in the world at that time. It was about $250,000 to build a hot shop. That was a lot of money. But most of the money didn't actually produce any better glass or any better. These are still Louisiana style furnaces. But it was all this fancy stuff. The insurance and it just went on and on and on. But we got by. So, exhibitions. I mentioned earlier that we had some exhibitions. And first national competitive exhibition was held at the Toledo Museum over in the great, what's it called? The Great Hall? The Great Gallery. And do you see the date? Do I have the date there? Oh, yeah, 1966. So the first workshop was in 62. 4 years later, 4 years and a few months later, they hold an exhibition. That's phenomenal. Well, the glass isn't so great looking. But they had real pretty lighting. These are some of the prize winners. And then 2 years, so they did it in 66, then they did it again in 68. And in 70, they decided not to have an open competitive exhibition, but rather 10 little tiny solo shows. So down here on the bottom left, you see Joel Meyer's area. So each of us had a kind of a space, and our work was displayed. That's Julie on the top, of course. Pre-patch. Dick Marcos was just back from his Veneti trip, so he had a lot of the Italian-looking things. And, of course, his signature marine up here on the upper right. You know what it is? What? They got it. The Lord's Prayer. Pulled in glass. He sent me a piece that was about 3/8 of an inch long. It had the entire Lord's Prayer on it. Because of course you make it big and then you pull it out. It's a glassblower's trick. We all know that everything diminishes proportionally. So you can. I took that little chip up to Brown. I was teaching at RISD. I took that up to Brown University to the laboratories and put it in a microscope so I could read to make sure that you got all the words right. And then my stuff there on the bottom. And Dale and Jane put this show together in 1971, and it was the most spectacular thing I think I've ever seen. It was so wonderful, that show. And it was all white glass. The room, in the American Crafts Museum, the room was entirely blacked out with shiny black vinyl sheet. Floor, walls, and ceiling. And then, I don't know, 20 or so of the pieces, of the 100 pieces that were in there, 20 of them had neon in them and they glowed. That was all the light in the whole room. It was just those few that were hot. You can't tell what's going on here in this photograph. It's not nearly as impressive, but it was very impressive when I walked in the room. I was blown away. Now, the most famous glass exhibition, I think, was Glass 79, or as Corning called it, New Glass. They did a show in 1959, a worldwide survey of glass, and it was almost all factory work because we hadn't started yet. It wasn't 62. So there weren't very many artists. There were a few artists in the 59 show, but very, very few. But in the 79 show, you can see there, what does it say, 196 artists and craftsmen and designers and fabric from 28 countries. This was a worldwide survey. And it put glass on the map. This was an incredibly important show for getting the word out and showing people what can be done with this incredible material. Glass is incredible. So the workshops, that's where I come in. I love doing workshops. That's why I'm here now. I'm doing a workshop where I'm teaching and I'm doing my own work, both. Thanks to Jeff and the whole crew here at the pavilion. You can tell that my lectures are very popular. This was a workshop that I did in Tulane University in New Orleans. And of course, the only time to go to New Orleans is Mardi Gras, right? So I told him I was busy all year except maybe March. But anyway, he knew what I was doing. I didn't really trick him. So as I travel around and make things often indigenous to the areas, the palm tree was made in Florida. It's a coconut palm. The lobsters are like 2.5 pounders, photographed on location on the Maine coast. And the snail cups come from, the inspiration came from the slugs and crawly things in the rainforest at Pilchuck. And the workshops, they were fun, you know? They were a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun. And I still try to have a lot of fun. So in 1970, Jack Schmidt and I and a few of the other students put together a workshop. Well, the museum did it. We were the grunts that actually fired everything up. And we tried to get the 3 guys back together again, Leaf Green, Littleton, and Labino. And we did it. They did it. They got them together. And Jack and I made this poster. It was a lot of fun to do that. CBS was there with the camera crew filming it. And then, so we blew glass at the museum in the new studio, and then we went out to Nick's studio and blew glass out of his place. And while we were at Nick's studio, he asked me to help him make a goblet. Now, Nick never, ever used a helper. He blew glass solo. He opened the door for himself. He put the handles on by himself. He mixed the batch by himself. He charged the furnace. He did everything. It was just the way it was done. That's the Nick Labino way. When he asked me, I was just flabbergasted. I said, sure, of course, I'll help you. But he said, I want to make a 3-bubble goblet. Why he wanted to do that, I really never knew. I never asked. But anyhow, we did it. You could see me kind of helping him up there on the top, bringing parts of it. And then he put it together, and then he opened it up and put it in the annealing oven. And the next day, he took it out of the annealing oven and handed it to me. And I thought that was kind of strange. It was like he didn't want it. But I took it. I was tickled pink to have a Nick Labino, right? And I took it home, and then I engraved on the surface. You see it? It's the post. It's from the design from the poster. You see that? And then I gave it back to Nick. And of course, he took it back. Because it had his name real big on it. Well, no, it was because of what it stood for. All the students that were in that workshop signed the goblet around the foot. It's really a special piece. And when Nick died, Libby gave it to me, so I get to keep it in my collection. And as Jeff said, we started the Glass Art Society in 1971 down in North Carolina. And this big photograph here is my studio down there. And then this is Tom McLaughlin, the guy holding the beer can. Not the guy sitting at the bench, but the one behind. That's Tom McLaughlin. And Bill Boyson. Oh man, there's a whole bunch of people there. A whole bunch of folks. It was great fun. Great fun. And Yvonne Streetman is a photographer who did a lot of documentation of that meeting. And then Gas 1 was a success, so guess what we did? Gas 2. In fact, we got a little tiny grant from the American Crafts Council to start up a new media organization, Glass Art Society. And it was like $500 or something. And I took half of the money and put it in the bank so we wouldn't spend it until next year. And I did these posters for them. Ah, look. You know who that is? Anybody know who that is? Tommy Blocker. What's he got on his head? My hat. Is that cool? I was hoping that photograph was in here. That's why I wore this hat tonight. Well, also because Pat gave it to me, and I was wanting Pat to know how much I appreciate the hat and how much I love having it, and how it reminds me of Tom and all the good times we had. In the second Glass Art Society meeting, 72, we sat around tables and actually started our organization. We actually elected officers. We did all the right things, except I don't know about those officers there. That's quite a motley crew, isn't it? 71 was a big year. Julie and Carpenter had that big show in New York City. He started the Pilchuck School. We started the Glass Art Society. It was just a fabulous time, fabulous adventure. And this Ruth Tamura on the right and Dale Julie on the left. And they're the people that actually started the school. And what do you see in the lower right? 2 what? Bovino furnaces. Right. I don't know how many we're up to now. Well, everybody in the first couple of years, everybody had to provide their own housing or build their own house. And these 2 guys from California came up, the Magic Dick and Leroy, and they came with a parachute in their back. And they just bent 8 twigs over, pulled out the parachute, and their house was done. I thought it was a fabulous idea. Plus, it looked like a magic mushroom. And there we are, building a what? Upper left. And here are 2 more. I know I'm being silly about this furnace thing, but I'm trying to set the record right. Littleton did not make the furnace. The important furnace was made by Dominic Labino, and that's why I keep calling it the Labino furnace. More Pilchuck views. Jack Schmidt helped me make that piece in the upper right. It's a tree stump with a chainsaw buried in it. And that was a trophy we were going to give to any student that could think of something that we couldn't make for them, we couldn't demonstrate or blow. And nobody stumped us, so we made our own trophy for ourselves. Now it's in the school. And it's right, it should be. Lark Dalton sent us a big giant salmon. It's like 85 pounds dressed weight. Frozen hard as a rock when it arrived, of course. So we pressed it into a sand bed and then poured in, I don't know, 50 or 60 pounds of molten glass and made a glass salmon, which we gave to Lark. And then 3 days later, when the salmon thawed out, I cooked it with 2 dozen lemons and 2 dozen onions on the grill. And here's the 25th anniversary in the upper right. And there's my mom. You see? Paul? Yeah. It's our mom. She's always good. You didn't get enough sauce right over here. That's a mop that we're using. Sauce. You need a big sausage mop when you say that. These are my trusty seeds. I've had them, well, the yellow one is retired now, but the blue one is still in my garage. And I love it. I've made a lot of funny and fun and funky things that well, they're like children's toys in a way, but they're also a way of expressing the bizarre things that glass can do. Not just the slick vase form or the elegant lightweight goblet form. Those are all good glass forms, but these sculptural things are also a lot of fun to do, and they're a lot of fun to play with. So I've made them for many years now. And one of the big projects was the farm. I did with Rob Bennett and all my students at Ohio University in Athens. And there was an invitation that we got from a children's art museum in Louisville, Kentucky. And they had a fantasy exhibition and they wanted art for kids. Here's some more of my trucks. The yellow one and the three guys up there in the top middle, they're parked in a parking lot. They're photographed in a parking lot. You can see the wreck. And there's that tree, that stump the blower again. Florida memorabilia on the right. Goblets have always fascinated me. I still love them, and I still make them today, and I still drink out of them. I love them. But they're a way of expressing things with glass that show that how glass can pull off into thin tentacle and be very delicate at the same time that it's also functional. When I first started making goblets, I made them with a cookie foot. You see up here on the left and here on the right and here. And it's a really thick and clunky looking foot. And so my friends told me that I should learn how to blow the feet, like the Italians did. You should have a blown foot, because they liked my goblets, but they didn't like the feet. You can see the earliest experiments of a blown foot are all in the lower right. Now that requires two blow instead of one. It requires usually two people. A few people have figured out how to do it solo, but I thought I'd have to have two people, two blowpipes, two this, two that. And what the hell, if I'm gonna go to all that work, I should drink out of both ends. So I invented the reversible goblet. And in this case, on the left, it's champagne on one end and cognac on the other. You know, it started with beer and whiskey, but now that the prices are up to where it's champagne and cognac. On the right, I continued with the concept of reversibility, and in this case, it's art versus craft. And the answer to the question that everybody wants to know is, what's the difference between art and craft? I wish I had known this when I was a graduate student. I hadn't thought of it yet. Which ends up. But there's also an also known as an ACA. Is that right? ACA. Also known, AKA. Also known as. For those pieces, and they're a tribute to Will Rogers, a roping fool. He could do things with a lariat that was just absolutely amazing. He would throw a lariat out at a passing rider on horseback, full gallop, and the throw would divide into three loops. One loop went on the head of the rider, one loop went on the head of the horse, and one loop went around the legs. I mean, it's impossible. Nobody can do that, but he did it. He was amazing. And when I'm making these, the art part, this part, the part up there, it looks like a lariat that's still moving around when the cowboy comes by twirling over the rope. That's how I gave it that. The culmination of the goblets, nothing's ever topped these. These were made on my 50th birthday, the week of my 50th birthday, with Dante Mariani and Janusz Pozniak. helping to build them and put them together. I had always fantasized that I wanted to make goblets as elegant and bizarre as some of the Italian goblets from the 17th and 18th century, but I wanted to use my own imagery, i.e. flamingos and seashells. And I couldn't do it. I didn't know how to do it. I had no concept of how these things were put together, but we finally did it with those guys. They could do it. So if you look at these, anything that you see that's a little bit irregular, you see how irregular this foot is? I know that. You see how perfect those trumpets are? Dante. But anyway, it was a wonderful adventure. We got about 100 goblets, and we sent 50 to the West Coast and 50 to the East Coast, and I had 2 openings on the same night. And we did a poster that was reversible. Yeah. Oh, I've been fascinated with trick glasses since I first taught here at the Toledo Museum in 1967, right out of graduate school. And I was fascinated with a goblet that I saw in the collection, similar to the one I'm holding in my hand up there that's, you know what. And I saw this goblet in the case, and it had a hole in it, and the hole was purposeful. The hole was made hot. It was not a broken goblet. There was a real hole there. Couldn't fathom why anybody would put a hole inside of a goblet, because as soon as you put the liquid in, it comes right out. And then people started telling me about these things called trick glasses or joke glasses from the 17th, 18th century. And that's what these are, all of these do. They're various kinds. There's one there that you can see I'm drinking out of the face of a stag. This photograph was taken in the Toledo Museum of Art, in the main case. This piece belongs to the museum's collection. This is one that I made in imitation of. This one up here is in the Corning Museum, and the one that we made. This was one that we just invented. It's a double ender also. I've never made one that keep 2 ways. I've had a lot of fun, but I've also made some pretty serious adventures with vases and goblets and forms that people could identify with. And as my skills went up, between 68 and 78, my skills jumped quite a bit, and I was able to control the glass, but there was something missing in those controlled pieces. There was no longer the fluidity that I saw in my earlier work. And I wanted that fluidity back again, so I decided to go up in scale and make big, heavy pieces that I could no longer control. I don't know if that makes sense, but as the size of the piece, the weight and so on goes up, it becomes more difficult to keep it under control, keep it symmetrical. And so I was able to make things in, as you see here in the bottom right, 1980, 10 years later from the 1970s, and yet I could still have that fluid feeling. And here are some of them. And I nicknamed them Mongols. It just means something big and heavy and massive and powerful and fun. And this one I titled a tribute to Jackson Pollock because it had that feeling of his painting. And here's some more of the Mongols. They're good size. They're 1.5 feet and weigh 40 to 60 pounds. So it's massive glass. It's glass that says a different statement than a goblet, right? It's a different statement, but it's all glass. And it also allowed me to use some of my painting skills, some of the color theory that I had gained while I was a painter, now starts showing up in these Mongol Also the filigree canes, the zigzag, pardon me, the optical ridges. I loved it. Now I'm going to take you on another journey. Up at the very top, middle, is an engraving that I did while I was a graduate student in studying painting in Iowa City. And it's just a standard copper plate engraved with a burette, and then you ink it and wet it, put the paper on it, and run it through a press, and that's what you get. It's an engraving, you know. Come up and see my engraving. This is my beard. On the left is the Lovino cup. On the right is my engraving Meisterstück. I'm embarrassed to say it. I gave myself my own test and passed. And I just studied the Bavarian style of engraving, and it's just, there's nothing special about it. It's just being perfect. Down here on the bottom, these are art marks made by ancient peoples. Natives. These are petroglyphs. This is from Alberta, Canada. This is from Maui, and that one is from Arizona. And those people were making marks on these rocks, and they were chipping through the dark surface on to the lighter colored stone underneath. That's what makes the mark show up. And guess what we're doing now? We're making marks in glass through one color down to the next color. And we call it cameo because it is related to cameo glass. But I jumped ahead there. That was just a introduction. Okay, so engraving, the 10th anniversary, the 30th anniversary. It was the 30th, the Raykow Commission, that really forced me, encouraged me to learn in classic glass engraving. And that's what I'm doing. Here. And this is the piece that tells the story of the 30 years. On one side, it tells the story of the 30 years of the Americans blowing glass. Why they started it, where they started, what formulas they used, who was a student of whom, etc., etc., etc. You know what's on the other side? My 30 years. Because I could do it. And I thought it was appropriate to do that and to tell my story. And so this slide lecture does what? It started with the Americans' history of Americans blowing glass, and now it's ending with mine. It's the same thing that I did with that big chalice. Pokal, call it a pokal. This is a piece I did at an engraving symposium in the Czech Republic, in Kamenetsky-Shanov, and this is the school. And this is the engraving in the school. This is a piece I made. That's the museum where it's, no, this is the museum where it's now housed. That piece. And it's called, the most is Czech for bridge. And traveling through that part of Europe, you know, the interstate highway in the 15th century was the rivers, right? I mean, that's, everything moved by the river. Everything was, so the cities grew up on the river, so they had to have what? To get to the other side, they had to have a bridge. So they built beautiful bridges. And so I tried to commemorate those bridges over the rivers, but it was also east and west. It was a bridge. This workshop, this symposium, was a bridge between the Americans and the Europeans, glass artists coming together. It was a bridge. That's all politics. There won't be any more politics. And then I just took off. Once I started doing that engraving, once I finished the 30th anniversary piece, I then started doing pieces that were classical cut glass, but not the kind of cut glass that your grandmother collects. which has a lot of geometric and rigid symmetrical patterns. This is looser, freer, more like me personally. Oh, this piece is right here. It's right there. Literally. You could turn around and see it if that curtain wasn't there. This piece right here. This piece. It's 2nd century AD. That's older than every one of you in this room. Probably older than all of us together. 2nd century, that's 150. What were you doing in the year 150 when that was made? Now, this is glass. You wouldn't think it, would you? Looks like clay, doesn't it? But it's glass, it's weathered, it's corroded on the surface, so it looks more like ceramics now than glass, but it is glass. If we were to take all that off, the page would kill it. But anyway, if you did take it off, you'd find clear glass underneath, or transparent. And that, so I made that pink one in tribute to the ancient. Of course, I didn't use slave labor to turn the machines. I used the switch. And here's some more. These are carved out of solid glass colors. I was lucky enough to have a friend with a furnace that I could put, the whole tank would be colored. So it wasn't clear glass with a thin veneer of Kugler. It was solid color all the way through, transparent colors all the way through. And the one on the left, of course, there's no color in that. But the others, that blue one, those two blue ones, that pink one, pink, rose, purple, all of those, they're all solid colors. So as you grind into it, as it gets thinner, the colors will change a little bit. And now here we are, this is what we're doing now, today. And this week, and we'll finish on Sunday with the workshop with the teaching. This is me engraving in various studios around. That's Jack Schmidt's studio there in the top middle in my shop and so on. And here we are doing my version of cameo work, where you make a cup, anneal it, and the cup has 2 or 3 or 4 layers, colors. We didn't ever do 4, we just did 2 or 3. And then you grind through to expose the colors that are underneath. It's not unlike the little cameo necklace piece or earrings or whatever that people used to have. And those were often made from seashells, but these are made from glass. So here we are picking them up. Right over there. This is so handy to have everything right in one building. Yeah. So those 2 pieces are downstairs. And there's Jeff puffing it out. Puffing the container. So there you go. And that's that. So I purposefully rushed enough that we would have 5 minutes for talking. That's all desirable. I thought there might be a few questions that it raised with things that I've said, and you might, now's a good time. Which one was that? Oh, the palm tree. The palm tree? Is that what it was? Oh, how I got into glass. Oh, yeah. So I was a painting major. I wanted to be an art major, and I wanted to teach in the college system. And so I was working on went to school to study, to get my MFA degree in painting, so I could go out and get a teaching job. And that's what I thought my career would be. My parents were both teachers. My Aunt Eleanor was a teacher. My grandfather was a teacher, college professor. So I came from a family of teachers, and I knew some of what the good and the bad of So I wanted to be a teacher. And you had to have an MFA degree was the desirable ticket to get a teaching job in 1964 or 5. So, went to school, did a whole year of painting, graduate work. Very excited about it. It was like almost everything I did that was new and exciting. I just decided, okay, I'm not going to be a painter, I'm going to be this, whatever this was. In grade, I was going to be a printmaker, I was going to be a sculptor, I was going to be this, I was going to be... And my friends were getting sick and tired of me telling them, that I wanted to do this for the rest of my life instead of painting. And so I'm showing my schedule for the summer school to my painting professor, who was leaving for the summer. All the senior faculty left in summertime because it was so hot and humid in Iowa City. Good for pigs and corn, but that's about it. And he said, well, this looks good, but you need 2 more credits because you have an assistantship. If you don't carry a full load, they'll take your assistantship away from you. So, what should I take? And he ran his finger down the list. And he said, here, that's 2 credits. Take that. And I said, what is it? He said, it doesn't matter. It's 2 credits. And that class was the second experimental glass blowing class in the United States of America. Why was I at that school? Why did I need 2 credits? Why did I meet Tom McLaughlin? Why am I standing here?
But tell us your painting instructor's name.
Well, it turns out my painting professor did not want me to study with the person that was replacing him for the summer. For some reason that I never understood, whether he didn't like his work or he didn't like his lifestyle or what he didn't like, I don't know. But he said, I don't want you to go in the studio where that man is teaching. I don't want you to go in the building where that man is teaching. I don't even want you on that side of the river. You take classes over here. Well, that's where all the fire is. So I took a ceramics and a glass, and that's not it. And the man's name, who I was never allowed to visit or say hello to, was David Howard. Bizarre. I mean, what's the chance of all that happening? Yeah. Clayton Bailey was at the first workshop and the second. He was in June and March. And I don't know that I had a photograph of him in my mind. I forgot. I did. I'm sorry. I didn't point him out. Yeah. And so I took a clay class with Clayton Bailey. This is another funny story. I probably shouldn't tell it. Why would I get in trouble from it? I hated that class. I mean, that's so dirty. And you make something and then you'd have to set it aside and then let it dry and days or a week later you paint some stuff on it and it was never the right color. It never came out the way you painted it. The paint was green and color came out blue. You had to know all that. I mean, ceramics was not my cup of tea. And Clayton said to me when we were having the final grading at the end of the summer, he said, Dreisbach, he said, Clay is really lousy. He said, if I give you the grade you really deserve for this work, you won't get that. But he said, I'll tell you what, I like your glass. So if you promise never, ever to touch clay again in your life, I'll give you an A based on your glass. About every 3 or 4 or 5 years, I go by Clayton's studio and I remind him that I have still not touched it and never will. Clayton, man, he is a great guy. This has been an opportunity to travel around the world and meet people and develop an almost instant family. I would assume that that happens very rarely, but it does happen in the glass world, and it's really a cool thing. And I say that because I brag about it, because I think it's something that the young people need to realize and take advantage of and enjoy. Do it and enjoy it.
What do you have? What advice do you have for the next generation?
Travel. There's no one place you're going to learn glass. I don't know about other things. You know, piano maybe. But I don't know. Glass, it seems like there's so many different approaches, so many different points of view and different ideas that you really have to pick up from a lot of different teachers. And so somehow visiting people, offering to help in their shop, take care of things, learn, and pick their brains. Read is good, always. I had to read. I didn't have teachers. I didn't have the kind of teachers that exist today for students. So I did dig a lot out of books, and that's still a resource that's always there. I was fascinated with colors, glass colors, because I was a painter, I guess, probably, and my paintings were very colorful, inspired by the post-impressionists and the impressionists, as well as the abstract expressionists. And I wanted to know how to make glass colors. And thought I might make a glass window someday, color stained glass window. Which I did finally, but it took a long time. But I made all the glass, I made all the colors. But I had to learn a little bit about chemistry in order to be able to understand how to make red and blue and green and what colors you could put next to each other. We've been talking about the zinc glasses and the lead glasses. And you can't have a lead glass next to a zinc sulfide glass, or you'll get this black, dark line. Which, if you know it's coming and design that into your plan, that's great. But if you pick it up and you're expecting it to be bright yellow and it turns out to be instead, then you're real disappointed. But if you read it, it tells you in there. Don't mix them. I've often wanted to teach a glass color class. But it requires, or in my mind, it requires a crucible furnace, multiple pot furnace, so that we can melt a variety of colors and see how they work and see what they do. We can change the proportions of some of the ingredients and see how that affects the workability, the viscosity, the bubbles, all these things that happen in glass. It's fascinating. Totally fascinating. I'm a science junkie. Yes.
What kind of interesting science have you applied to your glass making, other than the carving, like pneumatics or special carving techniques, or any of these neat physical phenomena?
I'm old school when it comes to the carving thing. I read about and heard about people using milling machines with diamond heads and so on. It sounds fascinating, but I sort of get off on doing it the old-fashioned way. But I have used some of the more modern color examples. Rare earths, I've been very fascinated with the rare earth elements. They're ridiculously expensive, so I don't get to melt them very often. But I do like what happens. And some of them are change their color based on the lighting. And also, there's a color that I made in the cutting. Remember there were some blue ones that I had carved, sort of a regular blue, middle of the road blue. But that blue has both cobalt and copper to get the tone to be exactly right. And when the glass is thick, the cobalt wins. So when the glass is thick, it looks like milk of magnesia cobalt blue. We all know what that is. But when you thin out that same glass, it's turquoise. It changes hue. It changes its hue. And the copper wins. And the cobalt fades off to the background. It's an interesting color. I call it, I named it Naples Blue for Mom.
Fritz, is there a studio or a country that you still want to blow glass at that you haven't done yet?
Oh, that I haven't done. Yeah, I keep going back to the ones I like. But there are some that would be interesting. I have not been to Australia, and there's a lot happening down in Australia. I've been to New Zealand, but I haven't been to Australia. I'd like to do that. I went to Japan, but I was only in one little tiny area near Seto, and I don't really know much about it. There's a lot happening in Japan also. I'd like to tour around and do more glass there. I've never been to Spain. That would be interesting. They have an incredible history. Most of the European countries I've been to. Some of the what we used to say East Bloc countries are growing and coming up, and Russia, and that would be an interesting adventure in the glass world. You know where I don't know, where I don't have any interest in going to, I don't know why, but I just don't think they do much in the way of glass. It's South America. I don't know what's going on there. I don't think they do glass. I mean, they do. Everybody does. But I don't know about it. Do you know about South America? Are you telling dirty jokes?
It's true.
Am I right? Yeah. She doesn't know. Central America, lots of glass in Central America, but not in South America. Africa, there's very, very little going on glass wise in Africa, but there are a few studios that I've heard of. Mom, good job. Our path will be mine. Okay, well, thanks so much for coming.